Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday, 20 minutes late. Sorry, it's been a long day, long week. Hope everybody's doing well. Today, we're going to talk about what I call the primary metric, the most important kind of myth in all of crypto, and that is, does Bitcoin price follow the hash rate or vice versa? We'll try answer that today, and we'll look at a whole bunch of other stuff as well, because people may think the markets suck. But I'll show you that they're actually not as bad as you may think. So thank you all for coming, and thank you Sean Donnelly and T&D Tesla and everybody in the chat as well. Digital Assets US and the whole gang. Let's jump in. And again, apologies for the brief delay. A lot to do. It's Tuesday. Bitcoin dominance is 55%. Bitcoin broke through 60K. It's still above. It's about 60,600 right now as I speak. It did shoot into the 61Ks, but again, we're chopping sideways, but there is some good stuff out there, and we'll dig into it. But there's a lot of ugly news first. Wrong screen to press the wrong button on the controller. One of those days. Oh, Fear and Greed is down around 37. Anyway, non-financial advice. Shout out to everybody on Patreon. Bert Frank, appreciate you. And for the Europeans, I'll go as fast as I can so you can get to bed. Thank you, Bert. Yes, glad you were in Patreon. Let's talk about the ugly news first. I always talk about unlocks, and they are so important. And some people think they are a nothing burger, but they're not, especially when the same names unlock every single week. I mean, the Sandbox and the games, Yield games, all these guys, they just rain every single week. But this week we've got Avalanche, we've got World WLD. I always get confused. That's the WorldCoin, I think. A silly concept, but another massive unlock, like nearly 11%. Arbitrum is there, Sandbox is there, Stark is there, Polkadot's there, Near is there, Doge, Uniswap, ApeCoin, Say, Filecoin, Pixel, Beam, etc. And I spent some time yesterday on DCA talking about Sui unlock at the beginning of September, and many, many more. But it's important to know what's coming. And this is another thing from Milk Road. Token unlocks, they're talking about them too. We'll see a milk-curdling $177 million worth of token unlocks this week. Arbitrum, 55 million. Stark, 26 million. And Sandbox, 55 million. These are big, big, big unlocks. And people think, oh, it's nothing. But the easy way to think about these unlocks is calculate how many retail investors do you need to buy these things to offset the unlock? And what do people do that unlock? And this is answered by Kobe in this beautiful chart. I just love this chart. So I wish I could draw this well. If I could, I'd do these all the time. But this is kind of what unlocks become over time for stocks. Of course, we know the curve for Bitcoin is like up fast in the early years and then tailing off flat. But when it comes to crypto and these unlocks, they're big steps. So the VCs buy at 5 or 10 cents, and then they got to wait a year. And then all the stuff they bought at 5 or 10 cents is now worth, say, $5. They're going to hold? Not when they know the asset is not going to make it. If they're half intelligent, they know only the top 1% of assets actually make it, which I've been preaching here for years. 99% won't. What are they going to do? They're going to unlock and they're going to sell. And the Covey says, why does this matter? Well, in my words, I said a small cap gem becomes a large cap turd. But it's important to be able to figure out any changes in supply and demand throughout the duration of your trade or investment. That's why I mention it all the time. Again, a small cap gem can quickly become a large cap with a very poorly untimed unlock, which will catch you out. One of the best cases was PYTHE this year. They had an unlock of like 160% of the existing circulating. And of course, the price is going to more than half. And it's exactly what it did. You can watch people unstaking and everything else through data that's out there from Dune. So just look at the data, everybody. Sometimes it's worth pulling the plug and getting off. Wait to see what happens. If the price goes down, maybe get back on the train. That's also a very safe strategy. Thank you as well, The Great Escape, and all the wonderful people for coming. Dude Travels, Joseph Samuel as well. And yeah, let's go. There's more. General Motors, there's a couple of reasons I mentioned this too, because it's kind of like It's like a little bit of a reverse unlock, but I think it's an interesting case. As you know, I'm a big believer that ICE is going to die. Let me explain why in a second. One case is General Motors. They make cars. Actually, the company is basically managed by UAW, and they're a little bit late. Although, if you believe some people in politics, they'll say General Motors led the electronic or the EV revolution, and they're a very good company, but they're not. Everything they touch is shrinking fast. They are now cutting back in China because they are getting their butts handed to them in China. And also bear in mind, let me see what I say. Car maker cutting capacity. They've already been doing that here in the US. Same with Ford and others. Long anticipated restructuring targets once they flush the business. And by the way, in China, they have a partnership where the Chinese partner owns 51%. And of course, that partnership fails because even if GM was in control, it'd probably still fail anyway. But the key thing here is 23% now in 2024 of all vehicles will be battery electric vehicles. People thought it'd be nothing and it's not going to happen until 2030. No, it's happening fast. Many countries around the world are already way beyond 50%, including China, EVs. If you don't have a good battery electric vehicle, you're toast. Now, General Motors also had to pull this from BestinTesla. They also had to pull out of Europe because they couldn't compete there. And the Europeans just realized, European car makers, GM couldn't compete in Europe many years ago. Now the European car makers can't even compete in China. That's just what's happening. But the reason I'm sharing this is really more about this. I've been waiting for the right moment to short this puppy because I know it's not going to make it. But what they're doing right now is instead of an unlock, they're doing a stock buyback. And this stock buyback, they get government loans and they use that money, which comes from taxpayers like me, to buy the stock back, to keep the price high so the executives can get their pockets lined with compensation. It should be illegal. I just don't know why it isn't. Anyway, enough of that. Let's talk about some other ugly news. PPI, we had the second lowest ever recorded PPI macro number this month. I repeat, second lowest ever recorded. It measures how much profit wholesalers and retailers are making. And the low number suggests that profits have dropped significantly. And if this continues, many companies will go out of business and earnings will suck really, really badly. The macro situation is nasty. I've talked about that for quite a long time, but if it wasn't for the massive government spending of $7 trillion, we'd be deep, deep, deep in recession. Now let's brighten up the mood and get to the bad news, because that was the ugly news. First of all, fear and greed is still low. We're down around 30. So not catastrophic. By the way, if you see 25 or lower, it's normally a good time to buy stuff in a bull market. Remember that, in a bull market. Also, when you look at government, and this is the same all over the world, not just specific to the US, but the US now, 43% of the dollars the government spent in July were borrowed. The Treasury is spending almost twice as much as it takes from us, and we're driving towards the fiscal cliff, and Congress is either clueless or complicit. It's that simple. And people, like, if you were an alien looking down this, you say, why even pay taxes? they're just printing money to cover the deficit. It's just ridiculous. Anywho, enough of that. And recession. This is from Charlie Bilello, 7,000 votes. 62% agree. Either we are in a recession today or about to enter a recession. As I covered in the Q&A on Sunday, there's always a recession somewhere. You know, commercial real estate, manufacturing, etc. are deep, deep, deep in recessions right now. Anyway, enough of that ugly and bad news. Time to get to the good news. Let's get a feel for where we've come over the last week in crypto. Now, this is crypto, all things divided by Bitcoin, not priced in melting ice cubes. And you can see ETH is down nearly 0.5% against Bitcoin. A lot of other things are up. Sol, XRP, Cardano, Tron, Binance, Toncoin up dark green. Aptos dark green too. Near dark green. Arbitrum dark green. So things are not quite that bad. And I decided to mix it up today and take a look back. Everything divided by Bitcoin over the last month. That tells a little bit of a different picture. ETH down 17% versus Bitcoin over the last month. That is pretty brutal. A lot of other stuff. Avalanche down hard. Matic down hard. Matic is just, the wheels came off that thing in 2021, I think. Polkadot down hard. Arbitrum, Optimism, VeChain, Link, etc. There's very few things that have beaten Bitcoin over the last month. Binance, Tron, Cardano, XRP, Solana, even SHIB. Is that thing still around? Anyway, that's kind of a different view of the world. Every time people can always find a point in time where you can make a story fit. I normally just look at the last week because this is a weekly show, but I thought it'd be interesting to throw in the last month because certain things have changed. But I do have some good news regarding Ethereum for those ETH holders out there. That's coming up in a minute. First of all, let's look at the money flows. Digital asset investment products saw inflows totaling 176 million, as investors probably saw the recent price weakness as a buying opportunity. So the money's coming back. It's good. Let's look at the buy asset. A couple of things to point out here. Bitcoin, weak. Ethereum, though, 155 million. Month to date is positive, 150 million year to date too. So that is good news for Ethereum. The money is coming back into the machine, and probably from the most recent market correction as well. And what else? Bitcoin, short Bitcoin fund as well. That had 16 million out. That's a very bullish sign. When money leaves that short vehicle, it's a very, very bullish sign. And they saw their largest outflows, I think, since May 2023. So that's also good news. That means we have pretty much bottomed. And Solana, big 4.5 million, up 4.5 million for the month. And what else? The rest is kind of crumbs. But they are the kind of the big three, remain the big three as usual so far. People sometimes question me, why do I talk about certain things? I tend to focus on this channel on winning assets and things that are probably worth staying away from. So that's kind of why I make these videos. Let's look at liquidation levels from Marty Party. A couple of interesting things to highlight here. We have some big liquidation levels all the way up to 64,000 for Bitcoin. I talk about 63,000 being a critical level to get behind us for us to really rebound back to 70K. Until we can get beyond 63K, that's not going to happen. And we will need some decent money flows into the ETFs to make that happen. But there's some other rain clouds on the horizon I'll talk about in a minute. Solana liquidation level up to 164. ETH up to about 28.60. And Sui, I think, is $1.16. But that fell pretty hard today as well. Anyway, let's look at some. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time talking about Bitcoin right now because that's the mothership that drives all of our directions. So first of all, we do have this is from Econometrics. Thank you, Nick, as well. I love your charts. This is kind of the post-halving start we have had. And if you look down to the bottom left corner, you see the orange. It is not a great start, but this dip isn't specific to Bitcoin. We basically are suffering from some macro challenges, carry trade unwind, summer doldrums, post-halving dip, you name it. It's been pretty crap, and it's worse than previous cycles. However, if you look at this chart, what screams at me, if you look at the date line, when is all the action going to happen? It's going to all happen out to approximately September, October 2025, if history repeats. This cycle did kick off a little earlier than previous cycles. Therefore, it could end a bit earlier, but it could also last a lot longer given the ETFs and the sheer hardness of Bitcoin as an asset. So all good things out there as well. Hold tight. Macro sucks. It's going to get better because of money printing. Now, this you'd think would rattle the market, but the opposite impact actually happened, which is very bizarre. Hey, Linda, long time no see. Thank you for coming. The Mt. Gox Bitgo Bag is on the move, as I say. This is from Arkham. Bitgo has just moved $2 billion of Mt. Gox Bitcoin. And this is the repayment process. So this is if I recall, Bitgo is the last of the 5 crypto service providers where creditors can reclaim their funds. And this is a large amount of Bitcoin. It would take BlackRock maybe 2 weeks to buy all of this, considering their average clip. But the address has initiated a test transaction ahead of expected repayments that affect 2 affected users. And I think it makes up about 33,000 Bitcoin. worth $2 billion at the current price. But the good news is, as we've seen with all the previous movements, the people that got, the creditors that got their Bitcoin back, they didn't sell. And that's based on on-chain data from Kraken and others. So no reason to be alarmed. And when this news broke, Bitcoin actually went up. So people now realize it's a nothing burger. Let's look at this now. We're going to talk a bit about this one, the most important metric. I've been looking at this for a long time, and this from Oliver Velez, and he calls it the most important metric. And I agree, because Bitcoin's hash rate is by far the most important metric of all. It's more important than price for the following reasons. First of all, it represents the security of the network. Now it's over 610 exahash, and there's no network on Earth that is more secure and more unattackable than Bitcoin. So rest assured, it's safe. Well, nothing is completely safe, but it's the safest thing we have right now. It's also viewed as an indication of the overall health of the network. It's an indication of the widening of global decentralization. It also serves as the purest sign of global interest and adoption. As Saylor would say, there is no second best. But let's dig into this metric with a couple of my charts to see, because I've always asked, every time I talk to a Bitcoin expert, one of the first questions I ask them is, does price follow the hash or vice versa? I will attempt to answer that again today, right now. First of all, this is the Bitcoin price and hash rate over, I think, 6 years, 7 years. And you can see nothing has happened except the price has gone up with two big peaks in the last bull run in 2021. We had April and November. Then it came down. Now we're pretty much back at those previous peaks in the previous bull run. What is different, however, is the hash rate is a lot higher. We're talking 500% higher than the last peaks. So the way I interpret this as a caveman is, okay, hash has gone up 5x, so the network's 5x more secure. The price is the same. What's going on? What's going on? Let's try to look at some more charts. And I do have some old correlations that I dug up. So back in old times, in 2016, there was an 86.2% correlation with hash. So when hash went up, price went up 86.2%. In 2017, 91.5%. 2019, 59.5%. So overall, typically it does happen. But all of a sudden, since 2022, hash has gone to the moon. And price has been flat. This is the crazy thing. So I don't know, I hope that pink line shows up on your screens, ladies and gentlemen. But that is kind of crazy. So then let's look at some correlations between Bitcoin and the actual hash rate. So I use the correlation coefficient here. Pink line at the top, Bitcoin price in the middle. And those two big dips are the bear markets. Okay, so there's no correlation. In fact, it's anti-correlation during bear markets, despite the fact that the hash continue to go up sometimes in bear markets. The price can fall, and that's just a bear market in Bitcoin. But overall, it is correlated, but it has some recovery to do. The question is, where to next? We are not sure, but Bitcoin is definitely overdue to rise in price to even get remotely close to what it was in history and being correlated to the price. So we'll see. Also, Bitcoin hash price too is now $42 per petahash per day. And that means most miners with the average efficiency of rig out there is being squeezed. They're just holding on for dear life, or they're about to unplug their rigs because the hash rate keeps going up, but price has to go up to keep this level sustainable. Or they have to trash their old rigs and buy new ones that are much more efficient. Either way, it's a cutthroat market out there in the Bitcoin miners. And let's look at global liquidity too. Another chart. Did warn you, a lot of charts today. Yellow is global liquidity. And for some reason, over the past 4 months, Bitcoin is lagging global liquidity. So we have Bitcoin lagging the hash rate, and now we have Bitcoin lagging global liquidity. So something tells me something is up. Either the miners have just been dumping like hell, or either between the Mt. Gox and the German selling and everything has taken Bitcoin price down to a lower level than it should be at, or People are worried about the Mt. Gox movements. We don't know what, but the ETFs are stacking like mad. Strange. Let's look at some drawdown history as well. Always a good reminder. We did hit a 34% drawdown in the latest carry trade unwind, where Bitcoin price went down to 58.5, 59, if I recall. Or was it? Let me get that right. Getting all my numbers confused. I think I want to make sure I get this right because it's very important. On the exact dip, yeah, it was 40. I think we went down to about 49K, 49.5, but it's sub 50K Bitcoin, which some people thought would never happen again, but we were there. Now, if you look at that drawdown compared to historic ones, a couple of things you can tell from this chart is it's still less steep than normal. And second of all, it is historically a pretty common pattern. And probably the last big drawdown we have. Will we see sub 50 again this bull run? Never say never, but based on this chart, the amount of times it will happen, especially with less drawdowns and more diminishing returns, I think is a little bit unlikely. But we'll see. If you want to recap, there's a team. Thank you to that team that puts these things together, take all my slides, all the content, turn it into podcast and emails, and you can read about it. If you prefer reading, you want to make sure you don't miss anything, 10 cents a day. Now, back to crypto itself. DePIN still wins the month, and it's impressive. Everything else is kind of flat to down, but DePIN still remains strong. I will do an analysis of the top DePIN names as well, because it is a very important narrative. The key narratives right now in crypto are AI, DePIN, DEXs. We should call it DAI, DAI, which is like the old token. Anyway, we'd have everything beginning with D. So that's the DePIN news. Bitcoin season is up to 24. We are nowhere near alt season, but some alts are still doing very well and outperforming Bitcoin by a lot. To name a few here, Toncoin is still crazy. XMR, XRP, Aave. It's weird, you know, over the last 90 days, these things can shift greatly depending on exactly what happens with lawsuits, etc., and other breaking news. Bitcoin is down around, let me see, 1, 2, 6, down position 11. Sol beat it by a little fraction. XLM as well. Sui up strong, but still red for the last 90 days. And all the stuff on the right, well, they're normally down there anyway. We won't talk much about them. Now, back to the good Ethereum news for the ETH lovers out there amongst us. Forget the title, but what is happening is, yes, in the past, ETH, the Grayscale ETH, did dump a lot faster than the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. I don't know why that gray arrow is not more to the left, but the good news is the bleed stopped. There was a zero selling out of the Ethereum Grayscale Trust on the 12th of August, yesterday. And that's historic. That's the first time it's ever happened. Hope it continues. It'll probably have some more bleed out, but that was positive, and the Ethereum ETFs had a positive plus $5 million for the day yesterday. We'll see what happens today. So good news for that. And, you know, once that Ethereum bleed stops, net money into this thing is still going to go up, and that's going to float up Ethereum and all boats in the space too. That's good news. Speaking of Ethereum and Solana, over $115 million has been bridged from other chains to Solana in the past week, which includes 95 million from Ethereum to Solana. So another version of bleed, but things are still moving into that big black hole, which we shouldn't be surprised with at this stage. Also, PayPal stablecoin flipped Ethereum on Solana. Now, the dominance is 51.47% Solana. And last week, Ethereum was dominant. Now, Solana is now growing faster. And we're going to see more stablecoin action moving to the Solana blockchain. Now, speaking of PayPal, a lot of questions regarding PayPal. What's happening with PayPal? I don't own PayPal. I did. I actually bought Square and PayPal. It was one of the two things I actually bought during the crash of the 20th of March, 2020 with C19. But I offloaded all those things a while back. And that's actually one of the gifts of cleaning your shelves at the end of every year, going into a new year. I always ask myself the same question: would I buy it now? If the answer is no, I sell it. Sometimes it's a ruthless decision, but oftentimes it helps. This chart is basically PayPal on the monthly. And you can see ever since summer 2021, it's just been down and to the right. That red shadow you see there is the bear market, where most of the badness happened. You could argue it happened before, but sometimes these fintech stocks were a little bit bubbly back then. It has not recovered. But remember, PayPal is doing some very creative things around crypto, including the stable coin. If they can get even 20% as big as something like Tether, that will be a huge money spinner for PayPal. So we'll see. I'm not in any PayPal position, by the way. That wasn't financial advice. And again, warning in news that impacts crypto. That's what I share here, not taking any political sides, but there is fear from Alex Thorne that a Chokepoint 3.0 could be on the way. And there's new evidence that one political party will continue the crackdown on crypto not because of the candidate Harris herself, but because of the advisors. Sometimes you have to look at who they surround themselves with. So there's a couple of people called like Brian Deese, Bharat Ramamurthy, and they were key figures in the Biden administration anti-crypto policies. Deese has a very big anti-crypto stance. He wrote a blog in the White House outlining the administration's approach to cryptocurrency risk, emphasizing fraud and risk mitigation, get rid of it, and a very restrictive stance on crypto. Bharat described the White House top crypto critic played a significant role as well in blocking stablecoin legislation, etc. So the policy is still consistent within the side of the House. They will remain in crackdown mode because of the advisors, we reckon. And this includes policies like Chokepoint 2.0, calling it now Chokepoint 3.0. I gave it that name, by the way. I hope you don't mind. And there could be restrictive crypto policies going forward, even though they don't stand up in court. But that's just the news. Let's look at the stock market. This will blow your minds. Everybody thinks the world ended because the carry trade unwound. No, market's actually up. This is for the last week. Everything survived and actually went green. Microsoft 3.6%, Apple 7%, Amazon 5%, Tesla 4%, Nvidia up a whopping 11.4%. Everything is pretty much green out there, except for Procter & Gamble and some other traditional things. Anyway, so yeah, we survived. And also, another good news, this is in the stock section because it regards Bitcoin miners, but this is Bitcoin miner reserves. They are done selling. Again, shout out to CryptoQuant for this chart. You can see here the miner reserves are lower than the low of January 2021 and pretty much at the level of January 2019. A deep, deep, deep bear market time. So the question, or sorry, that's the wrong line. I mean, just January 2021. I was reading the Bitcoin price in the bear market in January 2019. Scratch that. But still, the reserves are at 2021 bottom, which means the miner sell-off appears to be complete. It's good news. They're done selling. So we like that because that means there's not a lot of Bitcoin available to buy, so therefore prices should theoretically go up. And the miners recovered a little bit today, but they had a very bad week, the last week or so, because hash continues to go up and it gets more and more competitive out there. You can see here, most of the miners were up, some up big. Mawson was up huge yesterday, but down a bit today, but it was huge up on a HPC deal. DigiHost the winner today. BitDeer, Bitfarms, Riot up a bit, Mara up a bit too. Again, Mara are doing that new treasury strategy. They will be issuing debt to buy $250 million worth of Bitcoin, $250 million. Nice. And that's on top of their bag of 20,000 already. So when you count up the number of treasuries, there's only a handful of them that are substantial. If more come in, that's it. It's game over. And that's the Bitcoin party I'm here for. So everybody, hope you like the show. Sorry for being a little bit late today. Thank you as well to the mods in the chat out there. Bitcoin at 61,000. We're going to make it, everybody. We just got to be patient. August is going to suck. But who knows? We might rebound a little bit faster. Thank you, TNT Tesla, Kate, and Sean Donnelly, and all you lovely people here as well. And Joseph Samuel, good to see you again. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.